You are all consenting by being here. Thank you so much. Let's keep going. So here's our agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about what is Croi. We're going to share some key dates. You're going to get to meet a lot of people behind the scenes, from the Croi chairs and co-chairs, the community liaisons. You've met me, so you'll meet the other folks. The organizers, Ias USA. We're going to talk about the Community Scholar Program fairly extensively, and some of the other community engagement activities that we have going on during the conference. And of course, we want to have questions and answers and discussion throughout, so please feel free to do that in the chat, raise your hand. This is meant to be casual. And I also just want to remind you all that there's a real focus on this webinar on community engagement. So this is really about engaging advocates, community educators. That is our focus for today. And we recognize that Croi is much bigger than just that, but that is what our focus is for today. So a little bit of background on Croi. It was first started 30 years ago. So this is the 30th anniversary coming up in 1993. It is put on through a collaboration between the Croi Foundation and the International Antiviral Society, USA. That's Ias USA. This is different than the other IAS that you're familiar with. It is a forum for scientists and basic scientists, clinical investigators to share their research around all kinds of things regarding retroviruses and associated diseases. We're also there's going to be more inclusion coming this year with behavioral and social sciences. There's a synergy of the science that is brought to bear at Croi. Community engagement is incredibly critical. And Croi has been the facilitator for a number of important discoveries in terms of HIV research. And some of the most consequential research happens around HIV, and also, in the last few years, SARS-CoV-2, and we undoubtedly will have a number of things related to MPV or monkeypox in 2023. So what Croi is, it's purely scientific. It's a not-for-profit situation. It's international. It's what it's not is it's not a membership society. Croi is not commercially driven, and it is not government funded. So it looks and feels a lot different than some of the other conferences that you may be familiar with. So here's just basically what kind of an idea what Croi costs in a year. So this is what Croi cost a couple 2 years ago when it went virtual. So virtual Croi. You can just basically, what's interesting, I think, here is to see how it's broken down in terms of where the money goes or where the money is coming from. And you can see, unlike most conferences, the majority of the budget comes from participant registration fees. There's some grants and some other resources, but because this is not a commercial venture, the proportions are different than maybe you have seen in other conferences. And Croi, for all of this, Croi includes live talks, moderated symposia, posters, an extensive technical review of all the abstracts that come in. So very high quality scholarships for community educators and new investigators. Croi has a database, an info guide, creates an abstract book, does media briefings, and has an amazing website. And who does all this? So there's a planning committee that consists of about 45 volunteer scientists. There's 3 volunteer community liaisons. There's, a lot, 80 plus abstract reviewers who helped go through all the abstracts, and many thousands of hours planning, doing logistics and implementation before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. Croi folks have been meeting really since early this summer to get prepared for February. So it's kind of an ongoing production. Oops, I think I went a little too fast there. Okay. So here are some key dates to keep in mind. And you can, they're at that link, and I'll drop that link in a little bit. So August 29th, just about a week ago, the submission opened for general abstracts, as well as applications for scholarships, including the Community Scholar Program. In mid-September, the registration opens, and we have Ias USA people on the call today, and they may be able to give us a more accurate date other than mid-September, but it is coming soon for registration. Here is something very important: September 20 deadline for abstracts and scholarship applications. On November 1, folks will hear what the disposition is for their application or their abstract. So November 1 is a very important date. And finally, the ultimately important date is Croi 2023, which is happening in February in Seattle, Washington, at a brand new convention center that is literally still being built. We expect it to be done by the time we get there, but it'll be brand spanking new for Croi 2023. So now I've done a lot of talking, and I'm going to take a breather here, and I'm going to introduce we have a chair and a co-chair with us today. There's a co-chair and two chairs. We have most of those folks here today, and that includes Jim Hoxie and Diane Havlier. So I'm going to ask Jim to kick us off. Tell us who you are, and I will advance to your side when you want me to go there.
Thanks, Jim. So I'm Jim Hoxie. I'm at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. I directed the Penn Center for AIDS Research for many years there, and I've been on the Croi committee for several years. Jim, you could go to the next slide. And what I wanted to do with Diane Havler to follow what I have to say up is to give you a sense from the program committee, so that Jim mentioned, what happens at Croi. I know there are several people on this amazing international audience that have been to Croi, but others who may not know very much about it. And so I wanted to give you a 30,000-foot view of what the conference looks like before we get very deep into how important we see community participation and representation in this conference. So the science that we draw on and present at our conference is in three large groups, and it's been this way for some time. There is basic science, and the individuals that put this part of the program together that are participating in every one of these circles has a chair. So I chair the basic science group. Diane Havler chairs the clinical group, and Landon Meyer, who I don't think is able to be with us from Cape Town, chairs epidemiology and public health. This is a rotating group, so every year one person leaves, another person comes on, and I think my role this year is to be chair of the conference, but it really is a triumvirate, and with participation from Diane and Landon. And what's important to appreciate is that the science is not distinct. There are many overlapping areas, and we really like that when we see areas where scientists, investigators of different groups can actually communicate and share what's hot in their specific fields. In addition, next click, Jim. As Jim mentioned, for several years, there has been a community liaison subcommittee. Right now, this consists of Jim Pickett, Dawn Everett, and Nintendo Yola, representing the importance that community input has into what the conference is. So although we've got these three circles, the underpinning of this and underpinning is a participation of Jim, Dawn, and Nintendo's voice, and we are constantly looking for ways that community points of view can be represented, and that we can present topics that can be taken back to various communities all over the world. So as Jim mentioned, Croi 2023 is a very big year. One of the big things is that this will be the first in-person Croi we've had since 2019 for obvious reasons. So although we've been able to have a Croi every year and have done it virtually for 3 years, there's really no substitute for the vibrance of face-to-face interactions, what can happen when people meet. We recognize that, and we are very excited about bringing together people in person in Seattle for this meeting. As Jim also mentioned, this is Croi's 30th anniversary, and there'll be some events, especially during the opening ceremonies, that acknowledge this and honor this and pay tribute to the many voices from all over the world that have played a role in this conference being what it is. We have always and continue to have a special emphasis for young investigators, as I'll mention, and there are special events that work quite well virtually and will be even better in person for young investigators. And Jim will say more about that in the extent to which community representatives can participate and be part of this. And then finally, we are also this year inviting abstracts that touch on behavioral and social sciences, which although can be part of especially the clinical and public health circles, address special issues that I think we've come to very much appreciate during the times of COVID. And so we are inviting investigators doing work in this area to contribute. Next slide. And Jim, you can probably click through this just to get all the bullets up there. So the key things that Diane and I want you to know about Croi and what we strive to do are the following. First of all, we strive to create every year a program for presenting the cutting edge new science that's relevant to HIV and AIDS. So we don't want things that have been published that are stale. We are always looking for fresh things that have not been published or are just about to be. So it's a very exciting agenda for that reason. And this covers everything you can see below that: basic science, prevention, treatment, et cetera. Particular Crois will bring in areas that have sometimes peripheral, sometimes direct relevance to HIV/AIDS. Obviously, SARS-CoV-2 and COVID have been represented in the last few conferences and will still be this year, but we're also bringing in monkeypox. So we're trying to address other really important public health issues that are out there. Carlos Del Rio is one of the great voices we have, and I know he's on this call as well, and perhaps he can comment. We also, on the second bullet, provide a forum to welcome, mentor, and inspire young investigators. They are the next generation of scientists, educators, advocates, and community voices. We want them at this conference. We want them to learn, and we want them to grow within the context of the very rich science that we have. Third bullet goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Croi is a truly international meeting for scientists, educators, and communities from all over the world. This is an incredible call, just having the opportunity to address people from all over the world. But we want you to know this can be your conference. The points of view, the science, the things that come from different perspectives worldwide are really critical to making this conference what we want it to be. As Jim said, Croi is not subsidized by pharmaceutical companies, industry, or government. And then last, the goals, or sort of yellowish final bullet, is that the CLS, the Community Liaison Committee or Subcommittee, plays an integral and critical role in developing the Croi program, achieving its mission and goals. So this is not just something that happens for communities at the conference. We want people who've been there to be able to take what they've learned back to their communities and be able to talk about that. And Jim will say more about that. So this is the 30,000-foot view. Diane Havler, who chairs the clinical group, it will speak next just about her perspectives. Diane?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Diane Havler. And first, I want to thank Jim Pickett. What a wonderful introduction and energy that you provided for this meeting. And Jim, thank you for the overview of the conference. I just want to start out by a statement, and that is that it takes a community to both combat and end a pandemic. And I would argue that the best communicators of science to the general public are the community. And really, for that reason, it is such an honor to be on this call with you, where you're taking your own time, really with the same commitment we all have to address this pandemic. So I am a physician, a researcher. My story starts at the very beginning of the AIDS pandemic. I was a young physician in San Francisco, right when things erupted, and I really saw the worst parts of this disease, and subsequently decided to commit my career really to HIV and infectious diseases. I've worked in the first drugs that were used for HIV, combination drugs, did a lot of work with HIV and TB and co-infections, and now doing population level studies in the United States and sub-Saharan Africa, with combination approaches, prevention, treatment, and holistic health approaches. I'm the director of the ARI. So that's kind of like my background. I have an absolute passion for fighting the AIDS pandemic, and Croi, hands down, is my favorite scientific meeting of the year. So just in terms of what I chair the clinical part of the conference. What types of things are going to be presented at Croi? Well, first of all, we have HIV treatments. We're looking at new agents, pharmacokinetics, how these drugs are disposed in the body, drug resistance, complications of HIV, including infections and cancers. How does HIV affect the heart, the kidneys, the lung? What are the new advances in terms of children that are infected with HIV and the health of the moms? And then what about adolescents? What are some new approaches that we can use for adolescents, both in prevention and treatment, and to support them? As Jim mentioned, we also, for these same areas, we will have abstracts with SARS-CoV-2 or the COVID virus, and for Mpox. And one of the changes that we made this year in the conference is we're allowing persons submitting abstracts in those areas to wait until the late breaker deadline. And this is because those fields are so fast moving. As Jim emphasized, we want to make sure we have the latest, most exciting data that we can all discuss together in person at the meeting. So once again, just want to thank you for being on this call. We look forward to your participation.
Thank you so much, Jim and Diane. Our other co-chair, Landon, is in Cape Town and has family duty tonight. His son has a thing, so he has to be there. But I would love to introduce quickly another driving force behind the scientific portion of the program at Croi for many, many years. You may have seen him recently on CNN elsewhere, but Carlos Del Rio. Do you want to go off mute and tell us a little bit about your engagement with Croi and what you're looking forward to?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Well, I would like to echo what Diane and Jim stated. Croi is the best conference there is for in HIV. I haven't missed one of the conferences. I went the first time, and it started at a very small conference. Maybe there were 200 people in DC at what is now the Omni Hotel, and it has grown to be really a superb meeting. And it started really as a way to present some of the ACTG science, but it has transformed to be really where the best and the most important scientific findings in HIV are presented. And I think we've seen over the years how the science presented at Croi then gets transformed into policy, into practice, and how it impacts the epidemic. The epidemiology and prevention part of Croi has been particularly important, and I think all of us really look forward to hear what is being presented. And I think as recent as a couple of years ago, that's where the first time we heard about the on-demand PrEP. That's when we first heard about the results of the HPTN-083 study. So a lot of really cutting-edge science is being presented, in which are, as I said, are things that are now being incorporated into policy and into practice locally and globally. The participation of the community and of young investigators, to me, is probably the most exciting part of Croi. First of all, young investigators start, I've seen them over the 30 years go from, students, young investigators to now be some of the leaders presenting at the conference. And I can give you many examples of people that, their first presentation was a young investigator award at Croi, and now they're plenary speakers, or now they're invited speakers to the conference. So clearly, it's also a way for people to really develop their careers and develop a network of community of researchers and of persons living with HIV, community funders, the government, NIH, CDC. So, wouldn't miss it for anything. And I'm very excited that we're going to have Croi in person. I cannot continue doing conferences virtually. It's very hard, and it simply is not the same. You can hear the talks, but you don't have the additional benefits of the networking, the interactions. I particularly think that the poster sessions have suffered, and we have done put a lot of, as the program committee, put a lot of effort into trying to reimagine the poster sessions. So when we go back in person, the poster sessions again become one of the most important events at the conference. Over.
All right, Carlos, thank you so much for all of that. Thank you for all the work you have done over the years for this amazing conference. Now I would like to have my colleagues who are also community liaisons introduce themselves and give a little brief background on what the heck is a community liaison and what do we do. I'm not going to do that. You already know me, so I'm going to turn it over to, let's have Dawn.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Jim, for pulling us all together, as you often do. My name is Dawn Everett, and I am the founder of the WELL Project and the Women's Research Initiative on HIV and AIDS. I live here in the US, in Vermont, and I've been a longtime treatment activist. In fact, I have been to most of the 30 Crois back in the days of the Sheraton all the way up. And to echo some of my colleagues, it's an extraordinary meeting. And it's extraordinary for a number of reasons. And I think you've heard a lot of them, so I won't take our precious time now going through too many. I would just highlight two things from my perspective as somebody who's a community activist and advocate coming to this meeting. One is the incredible value of networking, of putting all of this information, incredibly important work and research out, and then having the opportunity to dialogue and discuss and debate and engage with each other in the halls, in the person in the seat next to you. So to Carlos's point, getting back into the room is a really, I think, important and essential piece of what we get so much of from Croi. So that's the first thing. And the other is that I really appreciate how you really come to Croi because you want to think about the science, and there are all different kinds of science involved here, as we all know, but you're really thinking about what's happening. How does the work that's happening at the bench become something that's viable and translate all the way to the bedside, to the clinical experience, and impact my lives and the lives of other people living with HIV. So I think that that's an extraordinary setting for really kind of diving in. I sometimes say, the first time I went to Croi, it was like I barely spoke conversational, clinical, and basic science. And I took pages and pages of notes and found other people who could translate them. But it really is an incredibly unique setting for that. And finally, just to go back to what Jim asked me to talk about, which was what did the community liaisons do? We really serve as the voice of the community, or represent the voices of the community to the best of our ability. We are only 3 people, but we do what we can to elevate issues and areas of concern, areas of import to the community. We also review all the community scholar applications, and we are very specifically referring to this program as the Community Scholar Program rather than as a conference scholarship, because we really are looking to our scholars to go back into their communities share information, and frankly, share it back with Croi so that there's really a full feedback loop around the things that we're learning, the things that we're hearing, because it makes everyone better. So the role of a community liaison member is really to support the program committee and also support the community and be sort of a bridge. And I probably have said enough and want to hand it over to my dear friend Nintendo to kind of add his 2 cents in this.
Thank you very much, Don, and thank you, Jim. And my name is Ntando Yola. I am based in Cape Town in South Africa with the Desmond Tutu Health Foundation, as well as an advocacy group known as Advocates for Prevention of HIV in Africa. And as you have heard, I'm also a member of Croi CLS. I think really there's nothing much to add to what Don has shared with us today, but I am reminded as we are having this call of a colleague of mine, an advocate, who, when we were talking about Croi, told me that actually I thought Croi is out of my league. And obviously I asked, why would you say that? And I hope that today really highlights to all of us as community members, as educators in our communities around science and advocates, that actually Croi is for us. So if you are about science, you are about the role, you are recognizing the role that science has to play in our prevention, treatment, and other aspects of our work, then Croi is for you. So I think, again, of importance, as we are going to hear more about Croi and how you can do what you can do to be part of, to be able to get a scholarship and join Croi. And one of the important things is that when you get that opportunity, you really are in a position to have access to the science and groundbreaking science. And really, we then, as part of all our work that is about choice and access to interventions that are out to really respond to HIV, we then also become a catalyst for that access to information and the science, and really highlighting the important role that science has to play in really achieving a world that we want to see without HIV. So I'd really like to thank everyone, and I'm really excited to see all of us really coming from the different parts of the world, as well as in the part where I am in Africa. So thank you very much, and over to you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Ntando and Don. It has been great working with you all the last several years through all these virtual meetings, and it will be nice to finally see each other in person at one of these in February. Now, I would love to ask Donna Jacobson from Ias USA to say hello and give us a little background on what Ias USA is and what you all do. And you are on mute, my friends.
There we go. Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Jim, Dawn, and Ntando for putting together this webinar. It's really helpful to get the word out about how to generate more applications for the community scholarship program. I'm Donna Jacobson. I'm the founding executive director of the Ias USA. In our planning call yesterday, Jim said the most important thing that people want to know is what's the difference between IAS and Ias USA. So we are not IAS. If you've gone or attended the IAS AIDS 2022 meeting just about a month ago, that's not us. We are Ias USA. We're a not-for-profit organization that our mission is to educate physicians, clinicians, and others who are involved in HIV care. I started in HIV in 1984. I was in a lab at Sloan Kettering in New York, spinning samples from people with KS, trying to understand KS, and then moved over to the administrative end of things in 1987, which is when I got more involved in the communications, publishing papers, helping to edit papers around HIV and complications of HIV. I have attended Croi almost since the beginning. I think I missed the first one, and 10 years ago, the program committee asked me to take over the administrative management. And that has been a real eye-opener in terms of the back end of Croi and managing Croi. I wanted to say a couple things about the community scholarship program. First, as you've heard before, this is our first time back in person in 3 years. And it took us 3 years to try to nail down what is a virtual meeting and how can we deliver information in a virtual setting. And now we're going back to in person. There's a lot to learn about going back into in person in this era. So I would encourage everybody, go to croiconference.org and look at the website for information. We are continually updating the website in terms of the information we're presenting, the FAQs, any of the issues that come up in terms of putting on a conference in this new era. And then also the different scholarship programs. So check the website frequently, check the instructions for the community scholarship program, pay attention to the mentor letter, pay attention to the details in the scholarship. We want everyone to be successful in their scholarship. And so many of you have met or talked with Jose Francisco, who's on our team, is managing the Community Educator Scholarship Program. He is great about answering your questions about the scholarship. You've only got less than 2 weeks left to put in your scholarship application. I think I want to now let Jim get back to the points of the webinar, but I did want to welcome everybody, and I hope to see all of you in Seattle in just about 5 months. And good luck on your applications. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Donna. And I just want everyone to, remember that we're all resources for you. We all represent Croi in various ways and are here to help if you have questions. So now we are going to talk a little bit about these community scholarship, the community scholar program that we've been talking so much about. We're going to give you some details. There's the direct URL, and again, I'll drop this in the chat in a moment. So who are community scholars? Who does this program serve? Who's a good fit? Well, let's see. Let's go through this. Get my computer to work here. So folks who could consider applying are community leaders who engage in communication, advocacy, and educational activities focused on prevention, treatment, and cure research in terms of HIV, doing any of those activities around hepatitis, SARS-CoV-2, MPV or Mpox, and other viral infections and related conditions. These folks are highly motivated to learn and apply a dynamic and ever-evolving research. And a community scholar is someone who has demonstrated established commitment to sharing scientific knowledge with community members and stakeholders, and showing us that you have the ability to expand research and science literacy among all of our communities who are impacted by the kinds of things we talk about at Croi. What also is required is to be able to demonstrate competency and the skills to translate complicated science to a wide array of community members and stakeholders. So taking, like Dawn said earlier, it sounds like a foreign language. A lot of it is a foreign language. So how do you take that foreign language of science and make it digestible, accessible, interesting, exciting, and important for all the communities for whom we're serving and partnering with? So there's 3 basic kinds of scholarships. One is a full scholarship where you have pretty much everything covered from your registration to your travel to hotel stay. A partial scholarship will cover the conference registration or the hotel. And then there's a registration scholarship that is a complimentary conference registration. So here are some more criteria. So you need to be active in communications, education, or advocacy efforts in communities, and only candidates who are affiliated with organizations that provide these things can apply. And there's a limit of 2 applications per organization. So if you have a big organization, you can't turn in 5 or 6 applications. There needs to be 2 per organization. at the most. What we're looking for in terms of criteria, people who are motivated, creative, competent, scientifically literate. English fluency is really important because Croi is conducted in English. And you need to be able to demonstrate your ability to understand and disseminate research in communities. There is a preference given to, hold on one second, I have to move something on my screen so I can actually see what I'm talking about. Okay. There's a preference given to folks who have demonstrated this capacity. We're really looking for people whose efforts in the area go beyond direct to client prevention services. So for instance, if you're doing clinical trial recruitment, that is wonderful. But to get this scholarship, you need to be doing more than engaging for clinical trial recruitment or perhaps being like a prep navigator or something. We also definitely take into consideration financial need. More important info. So this scholarship opportunity, the Community Scholar Program, is not for medical professionals, administrators, researchers, or media professionals. When we talk about people doing comms work, this is not a media professional, it's people doing comms work on behalf of their organization, engaging with their community, communicating the science. So any recipient of the community scholarship is limited to a total of 3 scholarships. This is because we want to limit the amount that people can get, so there's more opportunities for others. There's a limited amount of scholarships that can be awarded every year due to budgetary reasons. And so we want to be able to have lots of people be able to take advantage of this. And we really look forward to people who have had scholarships and have been at Croi as a community scholar to help others, to encourage others, to mentor others, so we can continue to expand the pool of advocates and communities who are really deeply engaged in the science. As folks may remember, in Croi 2020, we were originally going to be in person. It transitioned to virtual at the last hot second. I think Intando was actually in an airplane when it was changed from in person to virtual. So folks who received a scholarship for 2020, that's not included in your overall limit of 3 scholarships. And a couple last things to note. All Croi community scholars are required to fully participate in the conference. That includes a number of workshops. And after the conference, recipients must complete all evaluations and turn in a report on the science that was important to them, what they found interesting, what they found most impactful for their communities. These things are really important. The follow-up is really important. And it really ties into the work that we hope the scholars will do, is to continue to share science and bring the science into their various communities. If someone who can't fully participate does need to decline the award if they're given, and scholarships are not transferable. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the community engagement things that we have going on at Croi, and then we should have at least 10 minutes or so to have some questions and conversation, have enough of us talking and see what you all want to ask or want to have more information about. So one of the ways we engage Croi, a community during Croi, are breakfast clubs. So they kind of turned into, they were called the Breakfast Club for years. Once we went virtual, we called them the Margarita Breakfast Clubs, because acknowledging across many time zones, some people may be at the appropriate hour to have a coffee, some may be at the appropriate hour to have a margarita, and some may argue that there's no inappropriate hour for either of those things. And of course, there are virgin margaritas as well. So what this is it's a daily Zoom meeting, and this will continue to be over Zoom during the conference. So this part will continue to be virtual, and anyone can come. Whether you're registered for Croi or not, whether you're a scholar or not, anyone can come to these Breakfast Club Zoom meetings and engage and hear what's happening in terms of the science. So you can see what we did last year. We had a number of talks about cure, about aging, about rings, about long COVID, etc. And we had folks from all over the world joining us. Some of them were registered, some of them were not. But all of the speakers and all of these topics were things that were highlighted or being highlighted at Croi. So you're kind of getting an inside peek with some of the top presenters and the top most interesting stuff coming out at Croi. We invite them to the Breakfast Club, and then there's a little more of a casual engagement with them. It's not like having to stand up in a room full of a couple thousand people and ask a question. It's a lot more intimate and casual and relaxed and community friendly. So we're going to be doing another set of programming like this in 2023. Again, they're going to remain virtual, even though we're going to be together. We want to keep this open to everyone around the world. And frankly, getting people out of their hotel rooms in the old days and downstairs in some hotel conference room at 7 a.m. for breakfast. I mean, it worked and people were really motivated, but I think people will be just as happy to stay in their room and sip on their coffee while they're getting ready and join the Margarita Breakfast Club if they're actually on site for Croi. So we hope people will join us for that. Here's just a snapshot of who engaged in Croi Margarita Breakfast Clubs last year. We had folks from 23 countries based on a survey we did, 453 unique registrants across all the programs, about 100 attended each. And like this webinar, we shared the recordings and the slides with everyone. So even if the timing wasn't good for you, you would be able to access that at a time that's more convenient to you through the link. And finally, I think this is the last thing I want to talk about in terms of community engagement. We have a WhatsApp group that we do every year. So we'll have a Croi Community 2023 WhatsApp. And this is a way anyone who wants to be on it can be on it. And we encourage educators, scholars, researchers who are at Croi, and people who are not at Croi can be on this WhatsApp and kind of follow along. It's a great place to have an ongoing discussion and ask questions of each other. It's just a way to connect and help make sense of the science. A lot of this can be confusing, and if you're sitting in a basic science session and your mind is like exploding, which mine often does in basic science, I could put a question on WhatsApp, and Jim Hoxie will be on there and he will be able to respond to my question, and everyone else will have the benefit of that information. So we're looking forward to that, to having that WhatsApp going again. So thank you for your time listening to all of us talk a lot. Now I want to let me just close out of some things on my computer here. And let's see if we have any questions or comments. Does anyone want to ask a question verbally? You can raise your hand. I see a hand raised, and go ahead. Yusuf, if you want to unmute yourself and go on camera, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I'm in a meeting, so I couldn't on my camera. Nice discussion and amazing things. I haven't attended Croi, but actually Ias has actually ignited a lot of things, which Croi, I know it will do more. So just wanted to ask, in relation to what Khadija would have said, what is really meant by administrators? Sometimes we could see administrators, maybe someone is working around policy engagement, around the HIV, response, or other administrative roles, which I don't know definition around Croi. What is really administrator, so that someone should know if he falls into the exclusion criteria. And also, I just wanted to ask, maybe just to reiterate my question I asked at first, was really, is there any room beyond maybe community scholarship to see young people or people in low middle income countries who doesn't have maybe cross-cutting researches, to see they engage, especially maybe in the organizing, the repertoires, the community engagement or so like that. So just wanted to get clarification on these few things. So over and good, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Those are great questions. I'm gonna punt the first part of that to Donna. If you could just explain what we are thinking about when we say administrators and why administrators are excluded from the Community Educator Scholar Program.
Dawn or Donna?
I think I meant to say Donna. I was looking at you, Donna, but I probably said Dawn, so sorry. Brain decay underway. Donna.
You know, and I apologize, I don't know that administrators are excluded. What is included are people who take information and bring that back to the communities. So people, excuse me, people who educate communities about the science in Croi are those who are probably most likely to obtain a scholarship through the scholarship program. Administrators who are likely not going to receive a scholarship are those perhaps like myself who don't bring information back. I'm an administrator, I manage the conference, but my role is not to take the information, digest it, and then put it back to the community I serve in terms of blogs or articles or you know, meetings that we have. So maybe that is, I hope that's answering the question about the role of administrator. I will say, since we started organizing Croi, there is a more transparent way for administrators or others who are involved in HIV to register right out. You know, I think the beauty of the scholarship program is that helps to fund people either through the registration process or through travel to attend Croi. But those who have resources or can get resources can apply directly. I think that before we were involved, there were sort of backdoor ways for people from the community to apply via the press and community press program and others, but now we've opened that up to anyone who is actively involved in HIV communications and education can register on their own. Again, it's if you have the financial resources within your organization or others to do so. Does that answer the question, do you think, or?
I think that's right, Donna, and I think you really hit on it. It's so we also know that there are many people who, you know, depending on the organization you work at, you may wear a number of hats. So you may have a hat that is an administration sort of hat, but it's really about the kind of work you do in community and regarding communicating and educating about science. So if you are bringing science to the community and talking about it in workshops and engaging folks and writing blogs and stuff, and you also happen to do some administrative work for that organization, that won't preclude you. It's you really, your main thing is the work you do in terms of bringing science into community. You have to be able to demonstrate that and demonstrate that you're comfortable doing that. I also want to just highlight, Intando said earlier, you know, sometimes people feel like, oh, Croi is kind of out of my league. Croi is a lift, right? Croi does take some efforts to get to Croi and to engage in Croi. But I want to remind everyone that we're all here to sort of help each other. That's why we have the breakfast clubs and the WhatsApp. In person, we'll be meeting up every day and engaging with you directly. And even if you haven't been to Croi and you are a community educator, please consider putting in a scholarship application. So if you've gone to other scientific conferences, you've gone to Ias, the other Ias, you've gone to R4P, what have you, local and regional conferences that focus on science, please don't forget about, please, you know, throw your hat in the ring for the Croi application. I'm going to take the next question from Bukenya Simon Peter. Do you want to go off mute and ask your question?
Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope I'm heard, right?
What's that, Bukenya?
Are you getting me clearly?
Yes, yes.
Yes, beautiful.
Okay, yes. I'm Simon Peter Bukenya, Executive Director of Live Alive Network, Lian. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Darwin, for the organization of this call. I am having a concern about the online, especially for us people who are living in the low middle income countries, about navigating on the application, on the app. You find that I was this year I was given a chance to participate online in Croi, and you find that navigating to get the information from point A to point Z to a person who is not familiar with technology, it becomes hard. Yet they have been given an opportunity. Yet in-person attendance is more precise for someone to understand and gather the information. Because I remember when I finished the Croi, my very first activity was supposed to engage communities, especially the community leaders, what we call the gatekeepers. These people who have different knowledge and bias about HIV, and yet when the science comes and they don't have information about what is transpiring in the whole world, they mislead and misguide the people who are living with HIV. And again, it is our role to correct that information. So when we find them to give them that information, for example, someone to adopt it from the app, someone to get it, it is becoming so hard. Is there a way of how the people from the low middle income countries can be considered in attendance in person? Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing all of your experience and some of the the challenges that you face. We would love to see lots of folks from all over the world apply, and in fact, many of our scholars come from low and middle income countries, from particularly from sub-Saharan Africa, but other parts of the world as well. So the scholarship is very much open, and we definitely want to have that be a diverse pool, because community engagement is important everywhere, and it's critical where HIV is a pandemic and endemic, and continues to really wreak havoc in our communities. We need to have folks like you all on the ground to engage, to correct things that are incorrect, and to be out there and sharing your information. So I highly encourage you to apply if you are interested. And Dawn, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I realized we're running short on time, and I just want to make sure that for those of you who are interested and who are applying from outside of the US, to consider going ahead and working on getting visa applications, even before you know the outcome. As we know, the visa process has been really challenging for some, and the experience with AIDS 2022 was pretty shocking. So if you are interested in applying for a scholarship and you will be coming from outside of the US, please consider trying to get on the radar for a visa appointment, because February will come very quickly.
Thank you for saying that. We had planned to say that earlier. I'm so glad you brought it up. Visa wait times are extremely slow. So again, even though you won't know the disposition of your scholarship for a couple months, won't let you know until November. If you want to come, get the ball rolling. You can always cancel the appointment if you end up not being able to come. But it's just sad if you can't get a visa appointment until the middle of February, and the conference is the middle of February. So thank you for reminding us about that, Dawn. We are at time, but we're going to take the last.
Jim, can I
Oh,
make
please go
one
ahead,
comment?
Donna.
Yeah,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
And you can go onto the website and enter your information into the visa letter, and it will provide you a letter with details about Croi that can help you with your application. So look for that visa letter on the Croi website.
Great, thank you. And so we are at time, but I'm happy to stay here as long as we can keep, as long as you're here asking questions. I recognize that some of you may need to drop off, but I'm happy to keep questions up for the next couple of minutes. So at least the hands I see raised now. Agaba, do you want to go on mute, off mute, and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. This Agava from Nigeria. I've not attended Croi before, so I am very delighted with the kind of sharing you've given us worldwide concerning Croi. You know, HIV pandemic is hitting so hard in Nigeria, and we are trying our best in our country, most especially in the community. So I would like to have a clear picture on the inclusion or eligibility criteria concerning the scholarship application. For example, for me, I'm a health worker. So I'm a laboratorian, I'm a medical lab scientist. So I work in the lab. I have a one-on-one interaction with my clients, especially those living with HIV/AIDS. I ask them for a few questions. I have questionnaire, and I'm into research. So I want to have a clear picture about the eligibility scholarship. Those people applying for the scholarship, are they going to write an abstract? Will there be an abstract presentation for somebody to be qualified? And another question is that, what are your expectations? What are the expectations from the pool of applicants? What are you really looking for? What do you want? What do you want to get from the scholars? Is it based on research finding or a kind of retrospective study on HIV? I know that you talk about COVID-19, hepatitis B and C and all that. So I want to have an idea, then I can now go into putting my data together ahead of time. And another question is that, how many scholarships are you going to award based on its continents? How many from Africa, for example, and other parts of the country, so that we will have an idea? Because I have so many people who are willing to apply for the scholarship in my country. Of course, I don't want to be biased, but there are so many applicants who are waiting and really want to participate in the forthcoming Croi in US. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all that. And you're right, there's a lot of really amazing advocacy.
Jim, Jim, sorry, I wanted to add something related to his question so that you can answer everything.
Okay.
Just asking, Julie said community advisory boards are really encouraged to apply. Just to give it a context, I serve on the community advisory board for PIV, that's the MDC collaborative, and also represent them on the NIH cross-cap, which is actually community engagement. And I work in Nigeria. My main work is actually on the HIV space. So which one do you think is more better, to get a recommendation letter from the MDC or from my main work, so that I should know where I could actually put it on? So over.
Okay, so I'm gonna remind me if I forget. I'm gonna try to start with where we went with Agaba. So you're right, there's a lot of really great stuff happening in Nigeria, a lot of amazing advocates there. So for the community educator scholar, it is not about your own research. This is not a research scholarship. This is a scholarship focused on folks who are educating communities and sharing research findings, explaining research, getting people excited about the research, helping people understand why it's important, getting feedback on the research pipeline, for instance. All these things are not exactly research. You're talking about research, but it's not about conducting research. So this scholar program does not support people who are doing research. There are other means to get to the conference on that. There's young investigator scholarships, etc. This is really for people who are doing community engagement, community education, advocacy, and sharing this information that they get at Croi and other scientific information to communities in interesting and fun ways. And one of the main things we're going to be looking for in those applications are, can you demonstrate, can you explain how you do that? What is your background doing that? How have you done this before for other conferences? Or how do you share scientific information in other ways? The more you can create a really nice picture of what that looks like, the better you'll be. There is not a set amount of scholarships from any part of the world. It's all based on quality of the scholarship. I mean, we do look at a number of criteria. We do take into consideration financial need, but it's pretty much everyone is competing against everyone else. We do, want to have diversity, but we don't have a certain number of scholars that come from the US or from South Africa or Nigeria. It's really competitive. And it is a competitive thing. So we can expect to have 10 to 15 community scholars this year. Now, there may be more. In the last couple of years, when it was virtual, we had in the low 20s the number of scholars that we accepted. This year, it's unclear the exact number. It'll be based on budgeting issues, but I will say it's extremely competitive. So when you put your your scholarship letter together, or your application, follow those directions really clearly. Really spend time explaining how you share the science and how you bring it back, how you translate it, how you make it interesting for communities and understandable. The more you can do that, the better off you're going to be. And then in terms of where you should choose, like who should write your recommendation letter, I think that is really up to you to decide. Where you think the letter is most germane, fits the kind of the scholarship idea the best, who will write the best letter for you. But that's a choice that you're going to need to make. And I know we're running quite a bit over. I'm going to take our last question. This will be the last question. I know everyone has other things to do, so why don't we take this question from Emmanuel, and then we will close out the webinar. Go ahead, Emmanuel, you can go off mute.
Jim, just before Emmanuel jumps in there, sorry, Emmanuel, I just wanted to suggest to anyone who's considering putting in a scholarship, a scholar application, have someone write your letter, someone who knows you and who can talk about your work, not about your organization's work, not about, any of that, but really you're much better off having someone who can talk specifically to your work and your impact in your community and those types of things than you are to tell us about the organization you're affiliated with.
That's a great tip, and I'll add one more tip to that. Thank you for sharing that, Dawn. Also, when you have that letter or when you're writing up your own portion of the narrative for the application, it's really obvious, like when you cut and paste from other conferences, sometimes people actually forget and they'll, say, I would love to come to Ias, in Vienna, and that's not what we're talking about here. So be very careful, about reusing language and make sure that you're really tailoring all your efforts to the Croi application. I think we might have lost Emmanuel.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
Yeah,
are you? Do you want to ask your question, Emmanuel? I'm sorry, I thought I saw you fall off the screen. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to. Good afternoon from Nigeria. I want to thank Croi for the opportunity. Was a scholar for 2022. Yeah. Pharmacist Yusuf asked the question: how could we come in, those of us who don't have scientific presentations to make at the conference? How do we come into to help in the organization of the conference? Can we act as rapporteurs? Can we act as volunteers in the logistic team? Anyway, so I just want to ask: are there rooms for application for this opportunity to volunteer in any role to make Croi 2023 a success? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to see if we have anyone from IS still on the call to answer that more. Yeah, Jose, can you come on how does Croi manage volunteers? Are there ways to get engaged as a volunteer, especially coming from somewhere far away? I'm not sure of that, so I would love for you to answer.
Yeah, so typically with Croi volunteers, we get them from where the conference is being held. And so historically, we've had, in Boston, we've reached out to our program committee members to see if, if there's anyone in their networks, particularly students that would like to volunteer for the conference. Since we don't generally cover their housing, the dominant reason why we select local volunteers for the conference.
So thank you for that, Jose. I appreciate that. So yeah, the long and short of that is volunteers come from the local community because they're not supported in terms of travel and hotel and those sorts of things. Now, I know there's a lot more questions you may have. I am going to be sending out an email in the next day or so with a link to the slides we shared and with some of the links we shared in the chat and the recording. So when you get that email, if you have other questions that we didn't get to, we didn't answer enough, or we missed part of it, please reach out to us. And I can, when you send the email to me, and I'll either answer it if I know the answer, or I will get the answer for you. But I really appreciate everyone coming today. I'm sorry there wasn't quite enough time to get into every question or to continue the conversation, but this has been great. I really look forward to seeing me and the CLS. We're the ones who review the scholarship applications. We really look forward to seeing lots of you apply. And again, you can apply from any part of the world. If you are doing HIV education, you are bringing scientific education into your communities, you are sharing the science, you're talking about research, this could be a really good opportunity from you. And it's anywhere in the world. Someone asked about East African countries, of course. Anywhere, if you are doing that kind of work that the Community Scholar Program is looking for, you'll be a fit. And just, spend some time on that application. The application is due in a couple weeks, but you have a couple weeks. So you have time to pull together something really strong. We look forward to seeing that. And with that, I am going to thank everyone for being here. Thanks our chairs and co-chair, Jim and Diane, Carlos for being here, my colleagues and partners in crime, Dawn and Nintendo, and the wonderful team at Ias USA, Jose, Donna, and Kevin. And of course, all of you for being here and all of you for hanging out even 15, 20 minutes after the scheduled time was to stop. So with that said, thank you. Have a really wonderful day. And I hope to see you online. I hope to see you at Croi. And I wish you all the best. Take good care.